Welcome back to the manor. Julian McBain here, and we are hunting bots on Cyrene again. And I actually wanted to kind of go into why I chose the Sky Shatters as my target of the month, or whatever I'm going to hunt for the time being. And there's... must have gotten too close. There's actually a couple of reasons that I chose Sky Shatters as opposed to alternatives. There's the rock. That rock is like my benchmark point because it's far enough from the base that they don't get turreted, but they don't spawn so close to the rock that I end up overwhelmed. So yeah, I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to talk about something that I've actually been watching lectures on that I found very interesting. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you'll get exclusive content that only my patrons get to watch, so please go check that out if you're interested. Okay. So why Sky Shatter drones? And that's a really good question, because they're kind of an annoying thing to hunt. I mean, just listen to that background noise. And I'll be honest, more often than not, I find myself with the volume turned down just loud enough so I can tell when I'm engaged with the enemy or not. And I'll be watching something on the side, like probably most of us play Entropia Universe on a regular basis, haha. But no, the reason I chose Sky Shatter drones is twofold. One, the level of the Sky Shatter drones is about the same level that I was hunting Longtooth at. So, like, I was hunting level 19, between level 17 and level 19 Longtooth. These guys are level 18. Perfect. I know that they're at around my level for me to push my skills at, so that I will gain more combat skills as I fight them at a reasonable rate. The other reason I chose Sky Shatter robots is because I don't fight enough robots. And I mean that. Like, for all the time I've spent in Orthos just hunting drones, that's really, it's high pet efficiency, low skill efficiency hunting. Like, I literally went there just to collect Rubios so I could sell them at a profit, which didn't work out the way I had originally planned. I did not have the patience to sell Rubios for the 6 whole peck you get off of each one. So, unfortunate but true. You know, sometimes those things happen. But it means that my robot looter skill is, or profession is really, really low. So, like, if we pop open professions and we take up combat professions, we look over at looter, which, of course, we're in the wrong one because I believe that's technically a resource collecting one. There it is. Animal looter is 28. Mutant looter is 22. Robot looter is only 15. And that's a problem, because it means anytime I'm engaged against robots, I'm going to suffer the consequences. And so I thought, well, you know what? It's time for me to actually put some time in hunting robots. And I've actually had some really good luck with them. We've had some fairly decent globals. Nothing huge, but decent. And my reclaiming skill is climbing at a rather prodigious rate. And so, that's good. Not to mention my dodge skill. See, these guys shoot. They don't swing. And so I can get my longsword skill up, and they still won't attack in melee like the drones and Orthos will. Which means I'm now building my dodge skill, not my evade skill, which is something that I've been needing to do. Because you never know. That dodge can come in handy. And so having the opportunity to build that dodge up is really, really nice to have. So yeah. Needed to get experience fighting robots. Wanted to build certain skills. Simple as that. Now the downside is their loot really is TT fodder. It has no markup whatsoever. Yeah, 101. 101. Not applicable. 100. Yeah, so it's all TT fodder. So there is that. But you know what? That's okay. I don't think I have the high enough profession to start getting the good drops off these guys, like guns and armor and stuff. But that's why we're here building up the reclaiming skill, which will allow me to have the higher robot looter profession, which will increase my chances of getting the better loot. And I mean, there are other robots kicking around, like out in, I think it's this area here. You've got these little hover bots that you can go fight, and they're like level 3 or 4, and you can wear lighter armor, and I end up actually taking more damage from them than I do from these guys, ironically enough, because the armor differential. But you can hunt them with like a Barbarella, so that's good. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But yeah, so that's why I've elected to hunt these guys, and I think that so far I'm actually having some pretty good luck. My my spreadsheet dropped below 1,000 ped in the negative for the first time in like several months, so that's good news. And that just goes to remind you that Cyrene's loot table is fantastically better than many other planets. I think the only one that can really beat it is Monria. I am not convinced Toulon beats Cyrene for loot table, even though Toulon is part of the Monria company, the same company as Monria. Monria has a 0 tax rate. I think I believe that Toulon still has an internal tax rate, although like all planet partners, you can't calculate it because they don't give you access to what that number is. I think that the general thought is that Calypso's base tax rate is like 6 or 7%. So anyway, on non-Entropia stuff, I wanted to talk about. So this is Labor Day weekend, and I had one hell of a weekend. It's been really cool. So like this will come out on Wednesday. On Saturday, and if you watch my last video, you probably already know this. I went out to my first fencing tournament since COVID came around, and I didn't do great. I pushed myself way too far, and so I've been kind of a hurting unit all weekend. But in addition to that, I've been watching, as I'm sure you all know, I've been watching a series on personality psychology. I first watched the psychological significance of the Bible, and I moved on to a 200 level personality psychology lecture series. And it was actually the recording of a class at the University of Toronto a few years ago, and I've been really enjoying it. And yeah, there's definitely some cross-pollination, because the Bible series was actually born out of the lecture series I'm watching now. But Global 71 ped, thank you, Cyrene. But it really got into like the science of the psychology, because it got into the philosophy in the first half, and that was where all the cross-pollination was. But the second half of the course was all raw science, and that stuff I really enjoy too. And even though I'm more of a philosopher than a raw scientist, I am a scientist at heart. Even though my profession doesn't necessarily necessitate regular use of scientific doctrine. I do a lot of data analytics, and that's basically data science at its fundamental level, even though it's fairly baseline at the level in which I do it. But he was going through the correlation between personality traits, and the Big Five personality sequence is what they use, and it replaced the Myers-Briggs, because the Myers-Briggs turned out to be fundamentally flawed in several areas, of which I am still determining what those were. All I can determine is that the Big Five was designed to replace the Myers-Briggs, and I'm sure that a lot of people have like I'm an INTJ on the Myers-Briggs, and if I had to delineate a flaw from Myers-Briggs, one compared to the Big Five, is that the entire design of the Myers-Briggs was to make you feel good. There was no facing the flaws or the negative aspects of your personality. It was all the good stuff. And that's a problem, because when you're doing these things, you need to understand what your deficiencies are. So the two things I did is I took the Big Five personality exam, and I took an IQ test. And I'm not thrilled with the test that was offered, but my IQ came out within 1 point of where I usually get. And so I'm not going to say that the test is bad. I think that an IQ test should be more than 20 questions. Although from what I understand with what we know of IQ, roughly speaking, you can get a fairly accurate representation of IQ with a small question sample size, as long as you understand that you're going to be within a standard deviation, something like that. But I've taken the full IQ test, and I was within 1 point of where I was on that, and so I'm satisfied with that. It was the other information therein, like implications and standard deviations and percentiles, that I was more interested in, which you had to take the test and actually pay. Not it was like $20 to get, but I had to do all that, and that elicited a lot of good information, because IQ is the best predictor of success over time. That doesn't mean you don't fuck up, and it doesn't mean that your personality traits don't factor into it. So, for instance, you can have an off-the-charts IQ, but if you're low in conscientiousness, which basically says how hard you'll work, you're probably never going to get there, because you just can't focus. Or if you're low in openness, which is creativity, same idea, because you're not creative enough. Well, you can do a lot of repetitious work, but good luck trying to get something novel out there, which... interestingly, I'm in the 80th percentile for openness and the 75th percentile for conscientiousness, so that's all good. Even though I can't creativity myself out of a paper bag. No, I won't say that. My creativity is not where I wish it was. Like, I am not artistic at all. But I assimilate information, and I can come up with new ways of looking at things. Let's think of it that way. I'm a synthesizer. You know, I don't do originality very well, but if you give me a set of factors, I can come up with some novel way to utilize them, something like that. And kind of like this right here, where I'm playing Entropia Universe, and, you know, I'm talking while I'm in the game, but I'm not talking about Entropia Universe for the most part. I'm talking philosophy and things like that. And so that's really interesting. I'm actually lower in extroversion than I thought I would be. Like, I knew I would be low in extroversion. I'm a very introverted person. Like, I'm an intensely introverted person. I know this, but I was actually lower than I expected, which is something I know I need to focus on working on. Like, you can't... The center point of where you are in the Big Five will never change. The median point of your Big Five will never change, but you can expand the boundaries of which you can push it. So... for me, trying to push the boundaries toward extroversion as far as I can is going to be very important. Not only for my professional success, of which I actually do fairly well at work. I can proactively make phone calls, which I'm only in the 9th percentile for extroversion, and so that's a really low score. That's a really low score. That means I'm intensely introverted. I'm only more extroverted than 9% of people. And that's not a very large percentage of the population. But I can do things in a professional manner like this, or if I can lecture in front of a group of 20 or 30 people and not have a problem. But if I'm expected to meet and greet and make friends, forget it. And this is something I've been working on for a very long time, and unfortunately the pandemic did not exactly help things very much. And I've lost a lot of the skills that I had built up around that, and so that's actually going to be one of my foci. I'm working on coming up with a set of goals again, and I've been talking about this for a while, but it's been another full year. I really need to sit down and do it, and I need to do it before anything else goes completely sideways. You know, such as us turning into fucking Australia, and so. That's actually on the docket for the month of September. By the end of the month of September, I have to have set down some actual goals, and I will share them with you. So if I don't share them with you by October 1, I hope everyone who is my subscriber list gets into my comments and just types, "What the fuck?" Do WTF so you don't piss off YouTube. You know? Because, damn it, I need to be held accountable too. And so yeah, so most of the traits were from a raw perspective where I expected them to be. I expected to be high in trait openness. I expected to be high in trait conscientiousness. I actually expected myself to be higher in conscientiousness than openness, and the reverse was true. So that was really interesting. I expected to be low in extroversion because I'm a very introverted person, and I ended up being low in agreeableness. I'm only in the 21st percentile of agreeableness, and that means I'm a very disagreeable person, which what that means is I like competition. I like to contend with people. And that makes perfect sense because, I put on armor and I jump into a ring with a sword and I compete with people and I get, and I'm working on not getting frustrated with myself when I lose. And I've actually done quite well with that adaptation. But it does mean when I face off against someone that I know for a fact is better than I am, I will push myself beyond my limit, which is exactly why every muscle on the from my neck all the way down to my glutes is sore still 2 days later. And that's why I'll also go toe-to-toe with someone in a debate. And I get very passionate about that. And I try not to overdo it because I can overdo it. I don't get angry, but I do tend to get loud. And I will match anyone for loudness. And the primary reason for that is, well, I grew up with a father who has severe tinnitus. When you've got tinnitus, you can't hear anything. Or you can hear something, but all you hear is the tinnitus. And so everything gets really loud. And so I was used to being loud all the time. So I just naturally will ramp up to the level of whoever is speaking loudly. And I need to control that a lot better. So yeah, we covered my big five. I'm not going to go into what my IQ was. I don't think that's necessary. But so reviewing all of these things and how they play into the psychology of how we live our lives and how to be a more complete and more productive person, because I'm high in conscientiousness, which means I need to be productive. And I'm trying to figure out where the majority of my conscientiousness comes from, because I'm in the 75th percentile. The question is am I high in order, am I high in industriousness, or am I high in both? Because that can happen. And I have yet to figure that out. So people who are high in order like structure, right? Which, largely speaking, absolutely. I like working within a hierarchy that I can climb up and figure out exactly where I am among the hierarchy of all individuals in a given set of people. That's why I ended up, that's why I started in with a fencing school that had a structured hierarchy and a structured method to climb, even though the members within were actually independent of each other. It was just it was a hierarchy of competence, not of command. And that played really well to me. And I've actually tried adjusting it as I go, as things kind of turned around, but I haven't been able to do that, and that's okay. I'll figure that out. But that's orderliness. And I also have a very strict interpretation of chain of command, and of course that would play well because, I've been in the guard. But and something that annoys people who I know who tend to not be so orderly, because I have a lot of friends who are not as high in conscientiousness as I am, especially in orderliness. Industrious, probably, but not necessarily in orderliness. They say, well, I don't know what not my place is. And it's like, no, you don't get it. This is the way my brain works. High in orderliness, I know what my place is, and I know what is not my place. And sometimes I know where I am not supposed to say something because it's not my place. And yes, I know that's in a lot of ways kind of a mental construct, but at the same time, it's a useful mental construct, because it keeps you from saying things to people that you really shouldn't be talking to, or shooting yourself in the foot in a social situation. Which is good, because being introverted, I am always really hyper aware of social situations. And so the one piece I was really nervous about was emotional stability. Also known, its inverse is known as neuroticism. And so if you hear emotional stability or trait neuroticism, they're the same trait, but in the inverse. So if you're high in emotional stability, you're low in trait neuroticism. If you're high in neuroticism, you're low in emotional stability. and but they're the same trait. If you do a test, 17 different types, versions of the test, and they are consistent over time on this number, if you're in the 10th percentile for neuroticism, you're in the 90th percentile for emotional stability, and vice versa. That's just the way it works, because it's the same trait. It's just different names for it. And I'm in the 51st percentile for emotional stability, so I'm dead center, which actually makes a lot of sense to me, because I'm able to keep calm when shit's falling apart, but I suffer from social anxiety, which makes no sense to me at all. Like, house is on fire, gunfire going off in the background, sirens everywhere, chaos in the streets. Okay, I'm good to go. Let's do this. Hi, you need to go meet a girl. I don't even know. Thanks. Fuck. It's not that bad. It's not that bad, but oh, there are days it feels that way. But that's often how it can come out. You know, because it's just like there are people who would rather face. There are people out there who would be more comfortable facing a mass casualty incident than public speaking. And I mean that. And it's not that they want the mass casualty incident to happen. They definitely don't want that. But they are far more terrified of getting up and speaking publicly than their life being in danger due to, say, a disease or a catastrophe, car accident, trying not to trigger YouTube's algorithm. And so that's really interesting. And it's that trait neuroticism, or that emotional stability, that plays into it. And I don't remember what the two variations on that was. I think those are it. It's just neuroticism versus emotional stability. I don't think they parsed that one out. I'll have to go back through the lecture series and look it up. Or I can just look up the Big Five. But I find the Big Five to be really interesting because it's more accurate, in my opinion, than the Myers-Briggs, and it tells you what you have to work on, whereas the Myers-Briggs just gives you feel-good answers. And feel-good answers aren't useful for very much. I mean, yeah, it's like this is a way I identify, this is who I am, kind of. But it's more like, these are the things you're strong in, these are the things you're weak in. So you build on your strengths, and you work on your weaknesses. Because you don't want to just work on your weaknesses. You know why? Because if you work only on your weaknesses, then you have a bunch of strong weaknesses. That's not very useful. And the worst part is you're doing it at the expense of your strengths, which means you're losing out on the things you could be good at. So, for instance, I'm highly competitive. And so I get into competitions whenever I possibly can. But I'm also highly introverted, so I pick my competitions carefully. So, like, I work in an office whose focus is on sales. But, being highly introverted, I am not terrific at sales. I'm reasonable at sales. I have overcome a lot of my shortcomings in order to be able to be reasonably good at sales. But it's not my strong point. On the other hand, I am really good at fixing problems, relatively speaking. Or at least putting as much effort as I possibly can into fixing it. Some things aren't fixable. Some things just cannot be fixed. But when I find a problem, I go after it like a rabid dog. And that's the conscientiousness playing into it. And so instead of being a salesperson at my office, I sacrificed some earning potential and instead became an office manager. And so my primary purpose is to solve problems. I solve problems on the team. I solve problems for customers. That's what I do. And so my key metric is whether or not we lose people. What I mean is by customers, not like by death. And so I play my strengths. I play my semi-neuroticism because I will worry about things I forget to do. And I'm not, like I said, I'm right in the middle of the road. 51st percentile for emotional stability. So I'm average for that. Literally average for that. But I play that high conscientiousness. I come up with creative solutions that's high in openness. And I'm willing to go toe to toe with the people in corporate. That's my disagreeableness coming out. And I've actually, you know, they say that you can never beat corporate. I've actually won against corporate a few times. That actually, a couple of them have shocked me to know. But it helps. And so that was really interesting. And I just kind of wanted to share it with you. I would actually encourage you to do both of the things that I did. Look up the Big Five. The test should be, there's plenty of free tests out there. I can't remember which one I chose. And then take an IQ test just to see where you're at. And IQ is one of those things I think is very personal for people. But if you're interested, share your Big Five with us in the comments. I would love to know the kind of people who watch my content. And my hope is that there's a wide variety. But I have the feeling that a lot of the people who watch my content are likely... Well, you know what? I actually don't have a clue. Like, the only supposition I have is if I had to lean on a single trait, that would be watching content like this, it's high in openness. Because you're open to new experience, and this is certainly not the norm for YouTube. So that would be my guess, but I could be totally off base. So, but yeah, if you have a mind, drop your Big Five in. I think it would be cool, but that's just me. So okay, let's pull back here. We're gonna draw this guy back away from his pal there that spawned right in front of us, and then we will head back to the base. Human psychology is interesting, man. I really, really enjoy it. I think I might have missed my calling. But my problem is I don't think I would have been a very good clinician. Maybe I would have, but I don't know that I would have been a very good clinician. On the other hand, like a research psychologist, probably. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I really appreciate the support, and we will see you in the next one.